In the autumn of 1945, a boy of 12 in rural Ohio would get up before his parents, go out into the cold, and split enough kindling to start the kitchen fire. Then he would milk. Then he would eat. Then he would walk to school. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody thought it was worth writing about. It was simply Tuesday. I have spent a good many years reading the ordinary paperwork that America left behind. Ledgers, school records, farm journals, letters that were never meant to be interesting. And the thing that comes up again and again, the thing nobody at the time considered remarkable at all, is how much a child was expected to know how to do. 10 of them today. Some of them you will have heard of. 1 or 2, I suspect, will surprise you. And the last one on this list is the one that has vanished most completely because it was never taught in any school. It was simply absorbed. Let us begin. A word about the year first, because it matters. 1945 was the end of a very long stretch of doing without. 15 years of it. The Depression had taught a generation of American households to waste nothing, and then the war had made that thrift into something close to patriotism. Scrap drives, ration books, victory gardens in vacant lots. And in a household like that, a child was not a passenger. A child was labor. Not cruelly in most cases, and not unusually. Simply as a matter of arithmetic. There was a great deal to be done, and not enough hands to do it. And a 12-year-old has 2 perfectly good hands. So what follows is not a list of extraordinary children. These were ordinary children, in ordinary houses, doing what was ordinarily expected. The reason it looks extraordinary now is that the expectation went away and took the skills with it. I am not going to tell you that any of this was better. Some of it was quite hard, and a fair amount of it was dangerous. But it was known, and now it is not. Number 10. Laundry day was a full day and a heavy one, and the children were in it from the start. The hanging was the part with knowledge in it. Which things go on the line first, because the line is not infinite. How to hang a shirt so it dries without a crease set into the shoulder. Which way to face the pegs into the wind. What weather is worth starting a wash on, and what weather is not, which meant reading the sky in the morning and being right. Get it wrong, and the whole day's work is still damp at nightfall and comes in smelling of mildew, and it has to be done again. A 12-year-old girl knew the whole sequence and could run it without supervision. In many households she did, on the days her mother was doing something else. Number 9. Not from a book, from memory and from feel. Bread, in that period, was made by judgment rather than measurement. The flour varied. The kitchen temperature varied enormously, which changes everything about how the dough behaves. So the knowledge was not a set of numbers, it was a set of sensations. What the dough should feel like under the hand. When it has been kneaded enough. What proved dough looks like when it is ready, and what it looks like when it has gone too far. That is genuinely difficult to teach, and it was taught by standing next to somebody for years. A girl of 12 could make the household's bread, and, more to the point, could make it on a day when something had gone wrong, with the wrong flour or a cold kitchen, and adjust. That is the part that has gone, not baking. Baking is everywhere. Baking without instructions. Number 8. Canning, pickling, preserving, and the whole business of the summer surplus becoming the winter's food. It was hot, tedious work, and it ran for weeks. Children were in the middle of it, picking, washing, topping and tailing, packing jars, carrying, labeling, and carrying again down to wherever the household kept things cold. By 12, a child knew the sequence, knew which jars had sealed properly and which had not, and knew, importantly, that a jar which had not sealed correctly was a jar you did not eat from. The economics were straightforward. What was put up in August was what got eaten in February. A household that did it badly in the summer had a thin winter, and everybody in the house understood that connection directly, because they had done the work themselves and would shortly be eating the result. Number 7. Not babysit for an evening. Mind them all day with responsibility. A 12-year-old, usually the eldest girl, would be left in charge of the younger ones while both parents worked, or while the mother did something that could not be done with children underfoot. That meant feeding them, keeping them out of the fire and the road, settling the fights, and making the judgment call about whether something was serious enough to go and fetch an adult. That last one is the real skill, and it is not a small one. Knowing when a situation has exceeded you is a thing many adults never learn. It was so ordinary that it barely appears in the record at all, which is exactly why it is on this list. The things nobody writes down are the things everybody was doing. Number 6. Kindling was the daily job. The wood itself was the seasonal one, and it was enormous. A household heating with wood needed several cords for a winter, and a cord is a stack 4 feet by 4 feet by 8. That wood had to be cut, split, and stacked, and the stacking is not just tidiness. Stacked wrong, it does not season, and it burns badly all winter. Bark up or bark down, depending on whether it is under cover. Gaps for air, off the ground. Boys were on the saw at the far end from about 10 and splitting on their own by 12 or 13. The relationship between the work and the reward was completely visible. The pile was there in the yard all winter, going down. A child could see exactly how much warmth was left. Number 5. Almost every household had one, and in the war years it had a patriotic name attached to it. Each child was frequently given a row, or several, as their own responsibility, which meant the whole cycle: preparing the soil, sowing at the right depth, thinning the seedlings, which is a job people find emotionally difficult and children were simply told to do, weeding continuously, watering, and picking at the right moment rather than the convenient one. By 12, a child knew what a plant looked like when it needed water as against when it had a pest, and knew which of the green things coming up were the crop and which were not, which is less obvious than it sounds. They also knew, because they were told constantly, that the row was food and not a hobby. Number 4. A handful of knots, known cold, and known by feel in the dark. A bowline for a loop that will not slip and will still untie afterwards. A clove hitch for tying to a post. A square knot for joining two ends. A taut line hitch for a rope that needs to be tensioned and adjusted. That is 4 knots and perhaps an hour of teaching, and it covers most of what a farm or a household needed. It was passed down casually rather than formally. A child was shown once, made to do it, corrected, and that was the lesson. The reason it mattered is that things were tied constantly. Loads on wagons and trucks, animals, gates, washing lines, tarpaulins over things that must not get wet. Almost none of that is tied now. It is clipped, strapped, or bungeed. Number 3. No forecast to consult, or one that was hours old and regional and frequently wrong. So it was read directly, and children picked it up simply by being present while adults did it. High, thin cloud spreading, and the sky going pale, which means weather in a day or so. The wind changing direction. Smoke from a chimney flattening instead of rising. The particular stillness before a storm. Animals doing something out of the ordinary. None of it was infallible, and everybody knew that. But it was better than nothing, and a household made real decisions on it. Whether to start the wash, whether to cut hay, whether to send the child on the bicycle. A 12-year-old could look up and say something useful about the afternoon. That is the skill, and it is very nearly gone, because there is now a better answer in everybody's pocket. Number 2. A small thing, and I include it deliberately because of what sits underneath it. The method was known. Clean the shoe first, apply the polish thinly and let it dry. Then work it with the brush, then finish with a cloth. There is a version with water that produces a very high shine, and every American who went through the military learned it. Children did the household's shoes, often on a Saturday night for church the next morning, all the pairs lined up. The reason it is on the list is not the shoes. It is that a household in 1945 owned perhaps one good pair each, and expected them to last years, and maintained them accordingly. The polish was not vanity. it was preservation. Leather that is not fed cracks. One pair maintained. That is the part that has vanished. Number 1. And here is the one I mentioned at the start, the one that was never taught, never examined, never written down, and has disappeared more completely than any skill on this list. A child in 1945 spent a great deal of time with nothing whatever to do. Long journeys with no entertainment. Church. Waiting rooms. Winter evenings when it was dark at 4 and the radio was not on. Sunday afternoons that lasted, by all accounts, a geological age. They were not given anything to fill it with. They simply sat in it. And what came out of that, according to a great many of them, was thinking, or noticing, or the beginnings of whatever they turned out to be interested in. Most of them describe childhood boredom now with a peculiar fondness, which is not how it felt at the time. It was not a virtue. Nobody chose it. It was simply a condition of being alive in a house with no screen in it. It is the only item on this list that nobody had to learn, and it is the only one that is now genuinely difficult to do. 10 things, then, none of them remarkable at the time, none of them written down as achievements because nobody involved thought of them as achievements. I am not going to end by telling you that things were better. A good deal of that life was hard, and some of it was dangerous, and the children doing these jobs would mostly have been delighted to swap. But something did go, and it went quietly, and it went in about 2 generations. Not the skills themselves so much as the assumption underneath them. That a 12-year-old was a person who could be relied upon to do a real thing that mattered. That is what I keep finding in the ledgers and the letters. Not nostalgia, just a household that took it for granted. I am Harlan Fenwick. The Almanac continues.